Good evening. You're on this smoking section every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, talking about tobacco issues and sometimes veering off a little into other issues. We are certainly both members of Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights. And let's see, if anybody wants to call, we take phone calls. We don't bite. And let's just see if I can get those graphics up there. Voila. Now, Paul, just before we went on air, this is my good friend Paul Neff, known to all in Cambridge. My good friend, let me ask you a question. You were mentioning that Facebook, a lot of different dissident groups are kind of networked almost on Facebook. Can you describe that, what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, individuals in these groups share posts, and, you know, people like them, and they're on each other's friends list.
Right. So, you know,
so I think, and what I'm saying is that I think our group ought to disperse as individuals, each with, you know, their own type of writing,
sure,
their own type of posts they like to.
So in other words, what you're saying is in addition to our group page, Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights, you think members of our group as individuals could go out and perhaps interface with other Facebook pages and other groups and to kind of become part of a larger network. Is that what you're saying?
Right, and just explore things, because there's a lot out there to be inspired by.
And, you know, there are a lot of very good blogs. I think the Frank Davis blog, the New York City Clash, Smokers Against Discrimination. These are all Facebook pages, and I assume they have blogs attached to them. Do you, by any chance, know of any more groups which have taken a position on the tobacco tobacco specifically, or the nanny state in general?
The nanny state, yeah, I mean, the whole Trump phenomenon questions that, or the therapeutic state, or the managerial state, or the new class. And there's a lot of overlap among dissidents.
Right, right.
On that score.
So you actually think that that Donald Trump has, you know, is kind of anti the nanny state?
He's, you know, like he doesn't have a history of caring about these things that I know of.
As much as Clinton.
That's documented. No, here's the thing. He's a competent businessman and a maverick who's apparently he's ready to do certain things. Definitely talk about things others
right.
have been determined not to talk about.
So you think,
so people are pinning their hopes on him.
Some people, yes. So you think that
some of them, you know, in a very troubled way.
Yeah. So you think that, for example, like some people say that we know Clinton is very much in favor of a nanny state. She has a history that Donald Trump doesn't have a history that way. It's kind of an unknown.
Right.
Right. But any other groups that you say, for example, their Facebook pages, have any of them clearly spoken against the nanny state?
Well, here's the thing. Like, among people whose writing I respect, and
yes.
you know, whose posts I visit and share, and I wouldn't expect to find anybody who's very enthusiastic about the state-sponsored effort to stamp out smoking. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think they would say that that's really not a substantive issue at all.
Right.
And that goes for dissidents on the left and the right.
Dissidents on the left and on the right. Well,
yeah, and I mean dissidents from what we agree is like the new class, which would include neoliberals and neoconservatives.
Well, what you say, when you say we agree, who is the we there?
Dissidents.
The
dissident culture.
You're not, well,
dissident sites.
You're not including me necessarily in that.
Oh, no, it's much bigger.
Well, I mean, you're not including me in there because you don't know what my feeling is about
it. Right, not yet. No, I don't want to put you into a...
No, I'm merely asking because when you say we agree, what is the new class, you know...
I think you agree As far as
Well, I don't know exactly
go.
what it is you're talking about.
But I'm just saying,
clearly,
well,
so I don't know if I
there are
agree or
groups
not.
that deal with issues like immigration and things like that.
Well, I'm mostly concerned about the nanny state, and
Just the fact that you become known to them as an individual who possibly agrees with them on an individual basis about a particular issue, or thinks like someone else. Become liked, make yourself known as an interesting read or
well,
funny.
Well, okay. Let me ask you.
And then you have because I just don't know of any group that would want to advance that agenda.
What you do?
And the therapeutic state agenda,
Okay.
and like what they believe, I think if it prevails, that would naturally fall.
Okay, all right, okay. But then again, so you're making an assumption that's a reasonable assumption that these particular groups that you have become interested in, which I think you might call the alt-right, is that correct?
For the most part, yeah. Yeah.
You're kind of making an assumption that they would not necessarily be for. It doesn't seem in character for them to be.
I've
promoting that
never
nanny
seen any anti-smoking tendencies among people I've known all my life who've been dissidents of one kind or another.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or for that matter, who've been, considered stylish or cool or whatever. And I haven't noticed any particular anti-smoking thing among really smart people I've known.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about political groups. I'm not talking about necessarily smart or stupid people. But let me ask you, in an earlier conversation we had today, you said that it would be important for us, or a possible strategy would be for Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights would be to persuade people on the left that the tobacco issue is not a substantive issue
For the left, right.
for the left. Because for some reason,
Why should they be married to that issue? There's so many good reasons from on their terms.
right,
Why that's not a good issue.
and it's not an important issue.
And yet the members of the new class that are supposed to represent the left unanimously support this thing.
That's interesting. Now,
It is strange.
what about the right? So that it's not as important, or does the right, would you, in your political analysis,
Well, I don't know of anyone on the right that's in the public health system.
okay,
Or wants
really?
to advance.
Well, that reminds me, because, yes, I was at a hearing of the public health officials, and the man who was the director of the Department of Public Health for the state of Massachusetts at that time said, I certainly don't expect there'll be any Republicans in this audience, which was interesting. Mm-hmm. So evidently, people who promote the new, in your analysis, correctly or incorrectly, but in your analysis, generally fall on the left. Is that correct?
The new class presenting itself as representative of the left.
Right.
I don't think there's any reason to believe the average person that would vote for Elizabeth Warren is likely to be a non-smoker or anti-smoking.
Do you think Elizabeth Warren is part of the new class?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Are there any politicians, national politicians in the country who are not part of the new class?
Sanders wasn't.
Oh, Bernie Sanders.
Patrick Buchanan.
Right. Okay, that's really interesting.
I think I joined a group fans of Patrick Buchanan.
Recently?
Yes, and where I've encountered people I've known over the years.
Oh, really?
And people I just met.
Coincidentally?
Convergence of interest.
Aha,
Of,
convergence of
affinities.
interest, yes.
It's an exciting thing. Mm-hmm. We need to get a little serendipity into this.
Do you think is Patrick Buchanan, other than being a Republican, is
Yeah.
he part of any other group that you're aware of?
See, he's the Republicans are the closest thing to him, but he's not really of them.
Yeah. Okay. So for some reason, inexplicably, the nanny state or the therapeutic state seems to be something that the left or the people who are of the new class who call themselves the left are married to. Do you have any idea why that is in your analysis again? Or is that just...
I think I thought of something and I wrote it down, and I don't know if it'll come to me.
Well, you seem to be doing a lot of analysis politically, so that I can understand how, not every thought that you have.
It's a way that they
accessible.
can legitimize chipping away at our culture and things that we've related to for a long time, familiar things. They can extend their legitimacy and make that normative.
Okay.
For everybody to expect that to happen and not to be able to vote on it or
And certainly
do a
for
thing
the
about it.
first several hundred years of this country, tobacco was a very important part of our culture, so that if you can chip away at tobacco, you do, in fact, chip away at important parts of American culture.
And like from a vitalist and positive point of view, it's amazing that it has survived under all this pressure.
Well, that we both agree
all
on.
these disincentives. It was predicted to disappear shortly after the first Surgeon General's report, and then that was revised to the year 2000. And to achieve that end, they, dispersed a lot of falsehood.
And you've made a very good point that they continually get more strident, which is indicative of perhaps frustration on their part.
Right, it's like they're more obviously unbalanced individuals. So I think generally more and more people are getting red-pilled on this, as they say.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Seeing through the official reality of the mainstream media, filtered through the mainstream media, which you've emphasized over the years, the fact that, people are satisfied with secondary sources.
Well,
And very
yeah.
quick impressions.
Right.
They don't question.
Right. Like one of the things that is interesting is that even when tobacco was being associated with lung cancer, there were really very, very few studies that showed that relationship between tobacco and lung cancer.
I'm learning more about that.
But the more they got tremendous amount of publicity, so that it really wasn't many studies. It was very few, which weren't very rigorous, but the public and many people in government got the impression that it was a done deal because they got a lot of publicity.
Yeah. Again, though, like when I was a kid, what was really striking to me and fascinating to observe over the years was how people, after the initial report wore off, they resumed their normal habits.
Well, I don't think there was such a big drop in smoking after
maybe not
1960.
even. Maybe not even.
But they went down a little bit.
But it was interesting to me that people continued to start smoking, and it never, and in all these years it hasn't. It's never gotten to a point where these people that continue to do that are conspicuously stupid.
Let me ask you now, when Nadim Mason, who is one of our city councilors, and who happened, by the way, I think in the last election, got more votes than any other city councilor, which he must have worked very hard to get and must have interfaced with a lot of people here in Cambridge. But when he was on our show and was being interviewed by Emily, you said that you thought the name Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights could be improved upon. Can you perhaps give us a little idea of why you think that and what direction you would like that name to go?
Well, because it's been, smokers' rights has been around for a long time, and people have formed opinions on it. To a lot of people, it means maybe incursions on their rights. If it's not something they think about a lot, that might be their impression. But if it were, just some term like Paragon or whatever, Vanguard,
Well, I mean,
anything.
throw out something. Throw out
flying
something.
disc. It could be a lot of things.
Well, I mean,
But we could be. I'm not here to decide on that.
no, I know. I'm not even asking you for specific, but
It's
I'm just
kind of like
curious.
naming a rock and roll band. You want it to attract attention.
Yeah.
And be, for people to naturally want to know more about it. And for
right.
it to generate the sense that it's happening.
Oh, yeah, okay. Right.
So people already have the idea of smokers' rights filed away. And I think there's a lot of energy out there that if we hooked up with it, we'd be doing a lot better.
And, if something comes to you, it's not something that would be something that we would not reconsider. And another thing is you said that we should concentrate, or that perhaps, of course, we are a very welcoming organization, Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights, and we're very happy to have the membership we do and to have those persons who are sympathetic to us. But you said we should always, or perhaps concentrate a little bit more of our energy in getting younger people, that we should target younger people like the cigarette companies.
There's a wide margin there.
Like the cigarette companies target younger people.
Well, younger than us doesn't have to be young. Like,
Oh, really?
Just
Speak for yourself.
Any
Go
age
ahead.
younger than us, not necessarily young, but so that between all of us, we do have a good timeline on this whole thing. The elders, like ourselves, are valuable because we saw it all unfold.
Right, unfortunately,
And,
yeah.
We have a sense of history, and
And the young people have, what is it that we want from them?
the young bloods they're going to envy the freedom that we had.
Yeah.
They're already, they want it for themselves. They don't embrace this thing at all. I don't see any participation
Right.
among kids
But
that,
you think it would be
are not
good-
geeky.
Right, but you think it would be a good idea to concentrate a little more energy getting younger people, and perhaps, well, of course, they bring all their technological and social networking skills, which I think they have, right?
More than we do, yeah.
But you're getting pretty up to speed at Facebook yourself.
And at a very slow pace, yeah.
At a glacial pace?
Yeah,
or would you say
glacial.
A little bit faster
Just
than glacial?
meandering along,
Well, I mean, you've
moseying.
left me in the
But-
dust.
but,
You've left me in the dust on Facebook.
it is fun.
So it evidently is,
fun.
it's not, it might be glacial, but at least it's moving in the right direction. So,
Lots of meeting of the minds, a lot of stuff to think about.
now I know
A lot of,
go ahead.
well, if you interact with people that are doing parallel sorts of things, it's, you want to do what you do well.
Eventually parallel lines intersect, I think is
No,
that
I don't
a-
know about that, but I mean, like, if you see they're doing what they do very well, you want to do your part better.
Now, knowledge is power, but before I get to that, I don't know, that's, I guess, a cliche, but I wanted to, I always like to get people's personal smoking history on the show, or either that or smoking or non-smoking history, however it is. But I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Are you familiar with the term pack year in terms of smoking?
No.
Well, that means if you smoked a pack a day for a year, that would be a pack year. It's assuming you smoked about a pack a day, approximately.
Yeah.
You weren't smoking 2 cigarettes a day or something. How many pack years, approximately, have you smoked?
Well, I think that's really irrelevant.
Oh, irrelevant, okay. Your personal smoking history is irrelevant?
I think so. I mean, like, in some contexts, I'm very loose and free talking about what my habits are. But here's the thing. It's about the culture. Like, I'm not trying to promote smoking. I'm trying to, like, get the state out of it because what happens naturally is more interesting.
Yeah.
And-
Well, I mean, one thing is, one of the ways the state is able to get into it is they try to say, well, all smokers have these coughs and smokers get frequent colds, and smokers can't walk up flights of stairs. So sometimes I like to talk to people who have smoked, let's say, 40 or 50 years, and, you know, don't fit into this stereotype that's being pushed by the state as a... So that's why, to me, I often try to get smokers' histories.
Well, I did start noticing, like in the late 90s, stuff like Antonio Banderas
Yeah.
and Helena Bonham Carter getting ready for movies like Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
And, you know, like in articles about them, or if you know anything about them, they smoke a lot.
Yeah.
And
They were very active in the movie.
in the movie, they did a lot of athletic stuff that, you know, it would be hard for me to imagine doing it myself at any point in my life.
Well, you know, it would be hard for you? Did you?
It looked, you know, it looked very athletic.
Right, yet they were smokers.
Right.
And-
I mean, it's common for actors to train physically for a role.
Oh, yeah, especially if it's an active role.
Yeah.
Right, and do all their own stunts. That's always a very special something. Well, you know, it was interesting because on our Facebook page, we posted, Cambridge Citizens did anyway, some of the things, the recent bans that have been enacted in Boston, and it was interesting to me to find out, for example, unfortunately, that according to the Globe anyway, they have fined 127 fines for smoking in public parks. And as far as I understand, that fine is $250. And most of them took place in the public.
And can they possibly think that tactics like this make people more against smoking?
I don't know. It certainly makes smokers more uncomfortable. Yeah,
People tend to resent arbitrary authority.
you think that this will backfire?
Yeah. And that's why I think it's important to communicate to people that you don't have to be immediately enthusiastic about smoking per se,
right.
to be on the same page as us.
Certainly not. I mean,
You may like love to hate it, you know, hate to love it, that kind of thing. You may be ambivalent. It's not necessary to believe that it's harmless.
right. Well, I mean, certainly. So you're talking about more individual freedom, self-autonomy.
I mean, we do know that it's a cognitive enhancer. You know, that kind of thing is interesting.
And it's pleasant.
Yeah, and the fact that it's a tradition, the way a lot of people are thinking now tends to bear out that it's an important thing. Can't be decoupled from the culture so easily.
Yeah. Do you think?
Because a lot of traditionalism is something people are getting back into.
Do you think it's possible that within our lifetimes, presuming that we live a few more years anyway, that these bans, such as using smokeless tobacco in Fenway Park or smoking in Boston Common, or smoking in bars and restaurants, do you think it's possible that these will someday be rescinded in the next 20 years, let's say?
I think it's inevitable unless we become very authoritarian.
Right, and you have.
I think it's very likely.
And you don't think.
I don't think they'll survive.
And you think that the culture and that the winds that you often talk about, the political winds, are that there are stronger anti-authoritarian political winds.
I think if smoking
Growing.
was going to naturally disappear, it would have happened sometime in the 60s and 70s.
Right, and
The fact that the medical justification for hating it has been around for 50 years. People have been watching, and the mortality rate maybe is consistent with the 64 report, maybe not. We don't really know. We do know that people in Japan smoke a lot and have lower rates of lung cancer and things like that. So there are problems with their narrative. And the fact is, smoking has survived all this.
But in a larger context, you think that anti-authoritarian winds are building up in our society.
Oh yeah. I mean, every time a new story about Hillary breaks, and they try to dig up stuff on Trump. I don't want to take one side or the other.
Yeah, good, I'm
but,
glad, I'm glad.
That's the way they roll.
So you look at the election as a kind of a, not just on Hillary and Trump, but you think that a lot of Trump's popularity, or let's just say, not necessarily his popularity, but a lot of, let's say, voters or would-be voters or will be voting, you think it's an expression of a kind of fed-upness with authoritarianism?
Yeah, especially, but not exclusively, on the part of a class that's been ignored, and demonized, namely the angry white male.
Uh-huh.
But there's also evidence that blacks are sick of being taken for granted as a voting bloc by the Republicans. By the Democrats.
So you think this is good in terms of individual rights, individual freedom?
I think it's great that people are seeing through this class. The term comes from Irving Kristol.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The new class, did you call it?
Yeah. Maybe they call it something different now. I don't know.
Really?
But whatever. More people resent it.
I mean, he's
And
been dead.
more people see hope of throwing it off.
He's been dead a while, Irving. Mm-hmm. His son is around.
Yeah, I know. So has Ben Wattenberg.
Do you know that woman, Phyllis Schlafly? Is that how you pronounce her name? Do you know the woman I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't remember much about her.
But she just died recently at the age of 90. She was a conservative, very conservative, but I think we're going off the air in a second. Thanks for watching the smoking section. Paul, thanks for coming on and sharing your
My pleasure.
political musings.
Alrighty.
Please watch us again next Wednesday, 7 p.m.